What's going on, everyone? Let me know if my audio is okay. Sometimes I don't plug these things in all the way, and I kind of don't want to use the wireless earphones because I just don't want to get that EMF radiation right into my brain. So I kind of use these guys with the wire, like old school. Bob, what is going on? Chris, what is up? So you guys, Bob, let me know what's new. Also, you guys, just let me know if you have any questions at all. Happy to answer any health questions you guys may have. If I know the answer too, I mean, I'll try my best. It's tough to do it without a thorough assessment. But if you guys have some questions that you're uncertain of, even if I don't know, I probably know a good resource you can look into, and you can go research it and find it out for yourself and stuff like that. So if you guys have any questions at all, shoot away. If not, I'm just going to cover how to find a good health professional today, which I think is tough, for a lot of people to do. So I'm just going to give you guys a checklist of some things like I would personally look for. And Jerry's in the house, bastard. I was actually going to have Jerry as a guest today to talk about how obesity is not genetics, and he said he was going to go fishing, but all of a sudden um, he's here on this live here. But I will get him on as a guest on another live. We actually did a podcast together. It's one of my favorite ones. It must have been like 2 or 3 years ago at this point. He has a great story because he was overweight for quite a long time in his life, quite overweight, like obese basically. And he talks about getting out of corporate work. He was kind of in corporate work for 20 years, but it totally burned him out, and his health kind of went down the hill. And he talks about his story of how he had, the courage to leave and establish more of a sustainable life and stuff of that sort. So I'll definitely get him on. Yeah, not cool, Jerry. I know. It's not. Donald, what is going on? Tavo, good to see you guys. Okay, so let's get started. So if you guys are having some health problems or, some aesthetic challenges, let's just go over some things that like I would personally look for when seeking out help, when seeking out like a good healthcare provider, because it's so tough to find a good one, the one that cares and spends enough time with you and is actually like competent in what they do. So I've been doing this for like 18 years. And I've had a run-in with not like nothing crazy, nothing life-threatening, but some run-ins. Like I had a back injury, two back injuries. One of them was in 2002, so a very long time ago. I kind of slipped on wet concrete and fell and hit my back on the edge of a curb, and that kind of set me back uh, a good like 6 months for sure, where it was excruciating amounts of pain. But really, it took me about like 3 years to fully recover from start to finish to get back to being, 100% from that injury. So stuff can happen. I've also had social anxiety, low grade chronic anxiety as well from having a type A personality that didn't know how to stop working and stuff of that sort. Um, and what else? Um, that's kind of what comes into mind. I'm pretty sure I had some tweaks here and there, with training injuries, but luckily nothing serious. I'm 39, don't have any joint pain at all. Blood work looks great. Testosterone is still super high. Um, don't use any skin products at all. Just kind of rely on basically washing with water. I do use shampoo, like some or like natural shampoo, once a week and stuff like that. But I mean, that's about it. And mainly, I just brush my teeth with water and a toothbrush. I do also have some toothpaste. I mentioned it here on the live. I'll try to post it maybe in the comment section if you guys are looking more for a natural brand that I use like twice a week as well. So I just wash my mouth with that. Mainly just rely on really living a sustainable lifestyle with just eating pretty much 99% of my calories come from organic food or above grade, and mainly just drink water and organic green tea, honestly, and that's really freaking it. And kombucha, organic kombucha, which is what I have right here, always in glass. Okay, guys, try not never to drink out of plastic. Okay, so I have a checklist here. So when looking for a health professional to help you out with your health goals, the first step, and this is paramount, you have to meet the problem at the level of the problem. And it's a phrase I got from Stefan Walensky. I think it's so important to identify where your problems actually are, Because if you don't meet the problem at the level of the problem, obviously the problem is going to persist, right? So as a simple example, let's say we have a 40 pound or 40-year-old male that's, let's just say 40 pounds overweight, has high blood pressure, has a posterior lateral disc bulge in the L4, L5 to the right side. That's dynamic, so he has probably like an open fissure or something like that, and it's on and off pressing on his disc. And let's say he also has a very noticeable and severe upper cross syndrome. Okay, so I forgot all those problems he just listed, but those are all the problems he's having. So he needs to meet those problems at those level of the problems and get them resolved. Also, if he's like 40 pounds overweight, there's definitely going a little deeper, like some kind of mind virus, you can simplify, that has normalized behavior patterns that lead to poor eating and poor and unsustainable lifestyle patterns and stuff of that sort. Because you don't just become, 20, 30, 40 plus pounds overweight overnight. It takes actually like a lot of effort and a lot of money. You have to buy a lot of processed food, eat out a lot, eat fast food a lot, drink alcohol, or just drink a lot of liquid calories, energy drinks with like 40, 50 grams of sugar in there. It adds up, and it takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort to become overweight, and it takes a lot of money too. If you add it all up, I mean, the average American is spending $8,000 to $16,000 a year on non-essential expenses. And I've met many people that spend way more than that on just eating out, alcohol, little weekend trips or international trips here and there, where eating is also not the best, but it's kind of more justified because it's a trip, et cetera, et cetera. So in this case, that mind virus has to be attended to and changed, because that's what's probably leading to all of his biological issues. So so the issues are basically at a thinking, emotional dimension, and then also at a physical dimension, because his biology is starting to break down with the low back pain, and being very overweight causes a tremendous amount of inflammation in the body, and also puts a lot of shear and compressive penalties and torsion penalties on that spine as well. If he has that back injury too, I mean, his lifting technique needs to be evaluated 100%. There's definitely some kind of very poor movement patterns, because unless like you're in a warehouse and like a huge heavy box falls on you and cracks your back, pretty much all back pain is the result of poor spine hygiene and movement patterns throughout a person's life, as well as dietary patterns. Like if you're chronically dehydrated, the first place your body takes water from to keep surviving is basically your passive tissue, your discs, so they kind of flatten a bit more. And if they're already flat, maybe what's going to happen is then the facets will start, or the spinous process will start rubbing against each other, which will create arthritic pain in the lower back, and various other issues. And also from your tendons and ligaments, those are passive tissues as well. So it's important to identify, the problem at the level of the problem, and avoid missing that. Because once again, if you don't identify that and you don't attend to it at the right level, the problem's going to persist. And oftentimes this is exactly what happens. And that's why people never get better. And that's why 9 out of 10 Americans right now are metabolically sick. Like literally 90% of American adults can't even match the basic standards for metabolic health. And 80% are either overweight or obese. And, 80 to 85%, depending on what stats you look to, are on some type of medical drug. And people don't use medical drugs because they're doing well in life, okay? So you got to meet the problem at the level of the problem. And then once you identify that, or you may actually need a good healthcare provider to help identify that for you. Even if you go to a specialist, I would recommend finding a really good holistic healthcare practitioner, which is kind of what I do, because they can kind of help look at a person as a whole, because there are 12 systems in the human body. And I got this saying from Paula Chek, like, which part of a watch tells you the time? The whole thing. The whole thing needs to be working for that watch to provide you with accurate time. That little hand, that's not what tells you the time. You know, those little bolts or whatever, those little parts in the watch, that's not what tells you the time. If you lose that glass covering, for example, the watch breaks eventually. You know, that hand is a little very flimsy. So what part of the watch tells you the time? The whole thing. Just like what system of your body, there are 12 of them, allows you to live and function optimally, or just live and function, period. All of them. Like, how would you survive without your digestive system? How would you survive without your central nervous system? How would you survive without your respiratory system? You know, how would you survive without your skeletal system or muscular system, and stuff like that? So which part of your body helps you sort? The whole thing. The whole thing needs to work. So you need a really good holistic healthcare provider, and they're going to be tough to find as well, to help identify and get the bigger picture. And then you probably need to supplement with specialists while attending to the advice of that healthcare, holistic healthcare provider and stuff of that sort. But that's usually how it needs to be done if you want to get to a complete resolution of a health problem, because inevitably the biggest thing is really just changing the person that's causing the disease. And I know it's popular in American culture these days to blame the external, but trust me, short of you're walking down an aisle in a factory and a box falls on you, or you get in a really bad rear-ended with a really bad car accident because a person is texting you. I mean, short of those situations, pretty much any health problem you're going to experience in life is 100% your fault. It is. And it may be done not intentionally. It may have gone under the radar because the person doesn't have the proper education of what real food is today, or the fact that it's so important to sleep 8 hours, 8 consistent hours every single day, 7 days a week, or how it's not normal to sit at a computer all day, or no, it's not normal to work in front of coworkers you don't like the majority of the day. You know what I mean? That's going to have a huge negative impact on your mental health. And the mind and body are just one interchangeable unit. One can't exist without the other. So whenever mental pathologies begin to arise, they start creating psychosomatic issues as well, or maladaptive behavior that lead directly to biological issues, like high blood pressure. What does that mean? Hypertension is the medical phrase for it, too much tension, So, okay, you hop on some high blood pressure medications and it brings it down. But what happened with, changing all that tension and stress in your life? Don't you feel that's going to benefit you a tremendous amount more? Okay. So it's very common for, unfortunately, in American culture today, and this is really why nobody's getting better and just people are getting sicker and more obese as time goes on, that they don't want to take personal responsibility. They blame it on their genetics, and 1 out of every 1,000 cases, it could actually be the case. But even in that case, genetics loads the gun, but then your decisions in life pull the trigger, So there's a lot of power that you have. And like one of my mentors told me, you're doing it to yourself. I got this from Brian Carroll. And if you're doing it to yourself, you can stop anytime you want. Okay. So finding a good health provider. So when you look around for one, I would just make sure, the biggest thing is that they really have really good testimonials. I think that's the most important part, especially if they have a range of clients from different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different challenges, but they all got to the place where you want to go. That indicates that the practitioner is able to at least communicate or have some kind of system in place to get people to change their behaviors consistently enough to create the desired result and change, okay? A lot of times, too, you can't rely on just good, like Google business reviews or Yelp reviews. They're okay, and you can read through it, but it's also kind of deceptive, too, because oftentimes, like, for example, if you... oftentimes I would go into like a doctor's office, for example, and if you look at their patients, I mean, they're getting a lot of reviews, but you look at their patients, they look very sick, obese still. Just the only difference is after treatment, they're just now sick, obese people that are on medical drugs. So do you want to end up like that? It's up to you. That's up to you to decide. For me personally, no. I want to actually be healthy and look my best and feel my best and stuff of that sort. So another thing to look for is, do they provide detailed assessments upon first meeting you? A detailed assessment takes a bare minimum, even with a fairly healthy individual, like 2 to 3 hours. And if they have like a myriad of pathologies, it could take way longer. Okay. So if they're like, the average person at a doctor's office gets about 5-minute chat before they're diagnosed with something, and they usually just prescribed a medical drug, and that's it. There's no way. I mean, you guys have jobs. Imagine someone telling you, you enter a new company, you only have 5 minutes to determine all the problems of this company, and I expect an accurate solution. It's not going to happen. Just be realistic here, okay, guys? And they should, at least in my opinion, be spending 2 to 3 hours with you minimum, to find out your story, to find out what's going on in your life that led you to that specific health ailment. Now, it is important. Context is important. Obviously, emergency situations are way different. You get in a car accident, your leg is broken, you do need to be rushed off to an emergency room, okay? I'm not talking about those situations here. That's just a small percentage of what people are dealing with health-wise in America today, okay? With close to around 800,000 Americans dying from heart disease every year. 1 out of every 2 Americans developing cancer, and half of those dying from it. Close to 130,000 Americans dying from type 2 diabetes every year. So preventable with such easy things you can change in your life, and stuff of that sort. When you stop normalizing mental and physical pathology, you see like this stuff becomes easy. But until you do that, all this stuff is very hard and foreign. So are they spending time with you, during that time when they're first visiting you? Are they talking about symptoms only and how to manage those symptoms with like drugs or whatever else? Or are they getting to the root cause of what is actually causing your health ailment? Those are important things to look for too. And again, it's going to be really tough to find, especially in a very rushed and very kind of revolving door healthcare practice that America has for the most part. Okay, so let me see here. Okay, creating. Yeah, and it's important also just to be able to identify, like, are they treating symptoms or are they treating the person? And are they meeting the problem at the right level of the problem? Okay. That's very important, because if you get in a game of managing symptoms, when you get in a game of managing symptoms and not changing the person that's causing all the symptoms, more symptoms continue to arise. So with the blood pressure medication, let's say a person gets really high blood pressure, okay? And they take high blood pressure medication, okay. But just the problem is the belief system that led to a person behaving a certain way and accepting certain behaviors that led to the blood pressure is going to lead to a myriad of other issues throughout a lifetime. So let's say this person happens to be overworking and taking on too many responsibilities at his work. So that's going to suppress his immune system and probably open him up to cancer in his lifetime. Okay, so he got rid of his blood pressure maybe while taking that medical drug, which he has to take consistently and all the time, which nobody ever really does. But now, 10 years later, he has stomach cancer, from having an H. pylori infection that created an ulcer in his stomach that he didn't deal with, and also combined with suppressing his immune system from working too many hours indoors, on top of that, most likely in front of a computer and under too much stress. Okay, all of a sudden now he has cancer and stuff of that sort. So it's always important, always, and it's tough, but if you want a complete resolution, not just to play games, you got to change the person that's causing the disease, and that's it. And oftentimes this needs to be a combination of tremendous amount of behavioral change, education as well. I think that's so important. Educating a person not only on their specific health issue, so let's say if they're having digestive issues, but also educating them on basic health principles of how to sleep properly, use movement as medicine, how to identify real food and actually eat that real food, how to maybe manage their finances to create more financial freedom so they can kind of step outside of the rat race, which I think should be a part of anyone's health journey. Obviously, if you're staying in a rat race, it's gonna be really tough on the central nervous system, okay? And it's going to be really tough for a lot of people to get the proper recovery they need to optimize their mental and physical health, among a myriad of other variables that need to be attended to. Just giving you guys a quick snippets here, okay? Another important thing is the practitioner, the health practitioner, treating numbers or the individual? I've seen this a lot, but some people, a lot of times people bring their blood work to my assessments. So my assessments usually last about 3 hours or so, and they bring their blood work and they're like, look, my numbers are looking great, but I look at the individual and they look terrible and they're overweight and they're talking about how they're very miserable in life. So it's important to look at numbers, but you want to treat the individual, not just treat numbers. And that's what a lot of healthcare practitioners fall into. They're just treating numbers. And it's an easier form of practice, and it's more conducive to kind of this revolving door of patients, like get in, quick 5-minute chat, here are your medical drugs or whatever, here's a quick adjustment for your back, let's kind of stretch out your chest to loosen up that shoulder impingement or whatever, and get the hell out of the door. Well, that's not helping anyone. No one gets better. It does provide short-term relief sometimes, but then the issues always come back all the time. Because the only way to solve the issue is just, once again, change the person that's causing the issue. That's it. And that takes time. That takes good follow-through. Like I meet with my clients once a week for one-on-one calls. So important to get their questions answered, to set up goals for this week, objectives, objectively measurable goals as well. Have various steps in place to make sure a person carries through, have a good understanding of cognitive behavior therapy and how to create realistic behavioral change in people and stuff of that sort. Another thing to look for, and it's kind of more of a supplementary thing, is are they healthy themselves? That's huge too. Just like you won't take financial advice from a person that's broke, like, don't take health advice from a person that's not healthy themselves at all. That's like literally the blind leading the blind. And most everyone does this. They're like, well, this person has a title, says doctor in front of his name, says MD in front of his name. Yes, he's obese and probably even more sick and miserable and full of disease than me, but he must know what he's talking about. And maybe not. For sure, even if he knows what he's talking about, he's definitely not applying it, or doesn't even know how to apply a fraction of that knowledge. And remember, knowledge, it's not power. Like, power comes from knowledge that you're actually able to apply under real world circumstances. That's where the magic happens. And if you're not able to do that, like, your knowledge is useless. You're not able to actually apply it and make it work in the real world. So are they healthy themselves? Or am I listening to a popular fitness influencer online that's probably using, $2,000 to $3,000 of steroids every single month and taking health advice from them and wondering why they turn 35 and they just randomly disappear and can't continue with their career anymore? So obviously, if you listen to sick people for their advice, and don't be surprised if you're going to be sick yourself. I mean, the stuff's so common sense, man. It's crazy. It's crazy that people just have lost touch with what even living a health conscious lifestyle even is anymore. And that I even have to go over this very lost art information kind of thing that actually works if you actually do it, So another thing, like I kind of mentioned before, is how are their clients doing? Are their clients thriving? Because oftentimes you go to boot camps or whatever, people all look the same. They look like beat up, haggard. So if you do that boot camp, probably look the same way. If you go to a doctor's office, just look around when you're in there. Everyone there is like literally obese and looking terrible, So if the doctor had their before and after pictures, in the clinic, you would see, obese, very sick person before, and then after, an obese, very sick person with medical drugs after. So if you want to be like that, then go for it. You have your answer. But if not, then you got to keep looking around. Okay. I would say so. Okay, so the next thing. So, is there like a good follow-up process on top of having a thorough assessment? Is there a good follow-up process? Because remember, um, inevitably, when you're dealing with a person with health issues, they have some kind of mind virus. They have some kind of belief system that's not facilitating health conscious choices. Sick people can't make healthy decisions or they wouldn't be sick to begin with. Okay, it's just very, very basic and very obvious. So when you know you're like 20, 30 pounds overweight, maybe you have digestive issues, maybe cardiovascular issues, maybe low back pain issues, there's inevitably some type of mind virus that is destroying your biology basically by making you do and find it acceptable to do certain behaviors that are leading to all these issues. And that has to be worked out and changed because that's basically your like kind of software that basically operates all your hardware, like the bone, muscle, tissue, etc., etc. So if the software is all messed up and has a virus, obviously don't expect the hardware to be able to function properly or at all. And then eventually, if it's not dealt with, this mind virus ends up killing the host. And one of the greatest viruses of all is this mind virus because it's passed down from friends to friends, from family members to family members. Notice how very overweight people have very overweight pets and very overweight kids. It's not genetics, okay? Um, Especially these days, people are kind of reclassifying being overweight or obese as a disease. It is a disease, but they kind of worded in a way to make it seem like it's out of a person's hands. So first of all, just using common sense here again, since this is what this channel is all about, there are almost no obese people in the US before 1950. And definitely if we rewind back even like 5,000 years or 10,000 years during the hunter-gatherer era, there's literally zero obese people there, okay? And the human DNA strand for the Homo sapiens hasn't changed in over 200,000 years. Okay? So, and the DNA is very constant. You see very, very little mutations, almost none. Okay? So it's not like it could flip-flop so fast. It basically hasn't even really even changed in over 200,000 years. But yet we have, 80% of Americans are overweight or obese now and have totally normalized it, And unfortunately, people these days are just so desperate and so lost, and in so much, for a large extent, there are no absolutes, but in so much denial that they're kind of seeking out all these fat loss drugs and stuff like that, which in my opinion aren't going to work. There have been fat loss drugs in the market, so many that have come and gone, all have failed, and America is more obese than ever before. In fact, Americans today are more medically drugged out than any human in the history of the human race, but yet the sickest humans in the history of the human race. Even if you count all 28 human species that have come and gone, they are literally the sickest and more medically drugged out than ever. So my, critical thinking cap goes on. I'm like, well, how's more of what doesn't work going to work? It's not. It's totally not. It's going to be another disaster. And unfortunately, people, because of their desperation, are kind of still very gullible. And they don't understand that tampering with one system in the body, such as the digestive system, which a lot of these weight loss drugs do, tampers with all 12 systems of the human body. And just give it some time. The FDA bans 1,000 drugs every single year that they initially approved to be safe enough to be released into the market. And remember, every drug that ended up killing a person was initially scientifically proven to be completely safe to be released into the market. How many of those antidepressant drugs do you see on TV? Like, hey, if you took this, 5 years ago, contact this law firm. They're all over the place. It's just so silly and mind-boggling that people still believe that real health can be found in like some kind of drug. You know what I mean? And they're also confused about how to meet the problem at the level of the problem. So having problems with your weight is a emotional and thinking dimension problem, but people are approaching it at the biological level, not meeting the problem at the level of the problem. The problem will persist. It will. They will get temporary relief, maybe, and they'll brag about how much weight they're losing, but most of it is coming from muscle. There's a meta-analysis that I posted a while back observing many of these drugs showing that the large percentage of the weight loss is for muscle. So the person's appearance is actually worse. In the end, their metabolic health is worse. There are also in various mice studies showing that thyroid cancer happens because of a lot of these drugs, could happen because of a lot of these drugs, etc., digestive issues. Once again, once you tamper with one system, because all the systems are interconnected, you tamper with all the systems. And remember, it's taken, 13, I think like 13.8 billion years ago, the Big Bang happened, and then once the universe started expanding and cooling, atoms began to form, and then these atoms, which compose all matter, solids, liquids, gases, and plasma, began to condense even further to form the human cells, which are the simplest unit of measurement of a living organism, be it a plant cell or an animal cell. And then these cells further condense and contract, and there's like billions of atoms per cell, and then there are billions of cells per macronutrient, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and these further condense and form the tissue of the human body, like the connective tissue, filial tissue, which kind of surrounds the organs, the muscle tissue, the nervous tissue, and then these four tissues combine to form the human body, all 12 of its systems. This has taken 13.7 billion years of extremely, extremely complicated evolution, very, very complicated evolution. And it's just foolish to presume that even a very well-educated practitioner knows how introducing a very high dose of a certain substance, even if it comes from nature, impacts the whole entire body, even at a cellular level, okay? And how it impacts all 12 of these systems. And regardless, the main thing is just not meeting the problem at the level of the problem. So the problem's going to persist. Whether you like it or not, it's just going to. Okay. So research-based. I would recommend, there's pubmed.gov. You can check it out. You could do your own research. I would just learn how to read the research first, okay? And sometimes, especially online, people might try to be research-based, but if you've done research yourself, you'll find that you need a myriad of different studies on the particular subject to even come remotely close to an accurate conclusion of a good course of action for a particular health event. So let's say we're looking at a meta-analysis, which is an accumulation of a lot of different studies on a particular topic. Let's say we're looking at back traction, so kind of where, for example, you're hanging upside down to relieve tension in a, let's say, compressed disc or some kind of trauma to a disc, and basically creating space and traction to allow blood to circulate in there a little bit more, or to allow the disc to reside back into the vertebral body area and thus relieve the tension on a nerve or something like that. So if you look up the meta-analysis, at least when I looked it up many years ago, it showed that there's no difference. So some people might foolishly conclude like it doesn't work. Well, that's not quite true, because if you take a microscope and look at the individual studies, you'll see in any individual study that there is statistical variance. So there are some people that responded very well to the treatment, some people that got worse because of the treatment, and probably a lot of people in the middle that saw no change. So with traction, for example, some people do actually gain great relief with back traction and sometimes resolve their back issue. Some people, it just makes their issues worse. Some people, it's just indifferent. It doesn't do anything, maybe temporary relief at best. But if you just looked at that meta-analysis, or if you looked at 3 different studies out of the 40 studies in that meta-analysis, you'll come to the false conclusion that it either does work or doesn't work or makes things worse. And this is where you have to be careful with following information online. especially with evidence-based practitioners, because if they're real evidence-based practitioners, they'll be humble enough to go like, okay, so roughly speaking, for this subgroup of people, it helps. For this subgroup of people, it doesn't, et cetera, et cetera. And that's literally how most studies turn out. It's inconclusive. It's very situational based too. Okay. Oftentimes, maybe it worked well on rodents, but not in humans. Maybe it wasn't even tested on either or. So you got to determine that as well. You can't be like, well, this is a study. That means it's truthful. It's truthful under maybe a given circumstance and situation that might not even apply to you. So after you gather all that data, then you have to determine, does it apply to my specific situation? Is it meeting the problem at the level of the problem? And that is how you interpret data accurately. It takes time to read this data, to see what type of statistics they used as well. And if you agree with that, see what type of measurement tools they use. Sometimes you read these studies and it's kind of like just like a ridiculous study that's never going to happen in the real world. So you got to make the judgment call there. It's like, am I going to listen to this or not? But it's not so easy where it's like, studies show, coffee is bad for you. Studies show coffee is good for you. First of all, like, you can't even give any health advice without first meeting a person and knowing their specific situation. So if like a person online is already doing that, that's already a red flag to stop listening to them. Okay. And from my opinion, in my observation, and it's an accurate one, the more popular they are, the more kind of clickbaity their information is going to be. So the more slanted towards either being an absolute statement or close to absolutes their statements are going to be, because they have to dumb down the messages to appeal to a low IQ crowd, which most people fall under, kind of like, I have this book here, my book, The Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide, but there's also an amazing book, like way better than my book here, called Animal Farm. It's a great book, and I'd recommend you guys reading it, to read it. They have a great movie on it as well, I think 2 or 3 different ones. And there's a saying there, just to kind of, the pigs took over the farm, and they're kind of the leaders, and they're the sheep, right? But to communicate with the sheep, they had to create very simple and dumbed down slogans, and the sheep represented the masses, and inevitably the masses, they want to be told what to do. They want a father figure. And this is just going to be most people. That's just how the ecosystem works. Like, most people are even too afraid to work for themselves. Moreover, be truly free, which is even far more responsibility and stress than just simply working for yourself, So they want to be told what to do and have like a father figure. And so these pigs are able to control them by having quick absolute statements like 2 legs bad because they're anti-human. They kick the farmers out, right? And then 4 legs good because the animals have 4 legs. You see how simple they are? And that's what a lot of influencers communicate. That's their communication style too. And you'll see a lot of politicians do it as well. They have to communicate at the level, I forgot who said this. It may be Joseph Goebbels, but in order to be a good propagandist, you have to communicate at the level of your dumbest follower to become popular, So if you communicate above that, your message it might actually be more accurate and more useful. But it's going to fall on deaf ears because most people, especially in the US these days, are just so myopic. They're so detached from living in a way that humans have evolved to live, and are oftentimes just so tunnel vision. They need something quick. They need a short, dumbed down message to keep them on a path of mental and physical pathology. Okay? And they need something to reinforce that too. So in comes the medical drugs, the big pharma companies, selling gullible people the foolish ideal that it's so simple that you can just take this pill and you'll be healthy. In comes the influencers with the absolute statements, with the quick, short, this is always right. If you just eat this, if you just take this supplement I'm selling, if you just buy this ebook, all your problems will be resolved. I don't even know you and I don't even know your situation, but just do it and your problems will be resolved. Okay? So no, obviously. If you just use a little bit of intelligence, you realize how stupid that is. Imagine going to a doctor's office and before even talking to you, they prescribe you a medication. That's exactly what's happening here. And it doesn't work, That's why America is more sick than ever and unfortunately more broke than ever too, with Robert Kawasaki claiming that the average American has less than $1,000 to their name. Okay, so they're like sick, broke. It's like the worst situation all around. And close to 75% of personal bankruptcies in the US are due to health issues. So if you have 90% of Americans that are metabolically sick, 80 plus percent that are either overweight and obese, and the main reason for personal bankruptcy is health issues. What happened with the mortgage crisis back in I think 2006 and 2007, that's going to be like child's play compared to what's going to happen to the U.S. economy once people start getting really sick. And just to give you an idea of how normalized pathology has become in our culture, just a few days ago, I think it was like a week ago actually, I drove past a weight loss clinic. And get this, on the right side of the clinic, there's Cane's, Pizza Hut, and Dunkin' Donuts in the same block. On the left side, there's a Sonic's in the same block. So this is like when it's clear that people are being taken advantage of. There is probably some engineering to make the food more kind of addictive for sure. But really it's just people aren't educated on how to show respect to themselves and how to live a life of non-normalized mental and physical illness. So they're like, here, buy this junk food that's probably 200 to 300% more than what that equivalent food would cost for you making it at home on your own. And they have all sorts of myriad of ingredients. If you go to any fast food place and look at the ingredients of just like a chicken sandwich, it's probably like 40 different things on that label if you ask for it. And who knows how many of those are kind of linked to cancer or digestive issues or stuff of that sort. They're like, here, buy this overweight food or buy this food that's going to cause you to cause a tremendous amount of inflammation in your body, which will not only lead to biological changes, but also alter your mental state, because inflammation starts with the body and then leads to inflammation in the brain. And then you're wondering why you got depression. They're like, yeah, let's throw you on this Prozac or even more antidepressants, and let's get you to this weight loss clinic and put you on Ozempic and more weight loss drugs so you can keep, living your life of mental and physical misery and go back to the fast food place and then eat and do it again. I mean, it's great money for these people for sure. It's just so sad that I see, especially even a lot of people in this group still falling for that and doing it to themselves because they work hard for that money. And then they willingly go and spend that money at these places, you know what I mean? And stuff of that sort, instead of buying like organic food at a grocery store, which is like $12 a day for like a 2,000 calorie a day diet, or even if you buy the factory farm stuff, but it's in its whole food state, like the steak, vegetables, fruit, water, green tea, you'll still be doing great. And it'll be like $8 a day. What can $8 buy you when you go out and eat? The average American, again, spending $8,000 to $16,000 a year on non-essential expenses like eating out, alcohol, subscription services, just bullshit that really adds like literally no value to a person's life at the end of the day. So it's up to you guys. Just like my mentor once told me when I was being a fool, you're doing it to yourself, Eugene. So you can stop anytime. And it's the same with you guys. You're funding your own mental and physical pathology with your hard-earned money. No one is forcing you to buy that stuff. And it's taken you many, many years to become very overweight and create a specific health problem. Cancer doesn't just form overnight. It takes decades. Same thing with being overweight, or same thing with degeneration or some kind of pathologies going on in the back and stuff of this sort, okay? So that's my message for today. I hope this checklist of how to look for a good healthcare provider helps you save yourself a lot of time. Unfortunately, a lot of the really good healthcare providers don't work under the insurance banner, and that sucks, because oftentimes insurance just covers pills and surgeries for the most part, and that's it. Uh, but that's just how it is, and they just don't compensate you like I do, like 2 to 3 hour assessments, actually 4 hour assessments, because I have an initial 3 hour assessment before the program even begins, and then about an hour assessment on some other topic about 70% into the work, into the program as well. And there's a lot of follow-up weekly calls. I make myself always accessible to my clients. They can always text me with any questions. You can't quite put that on a resume, but I think that's so important for a person to know that you're there to help them, whenever they have questions that arise. And sometimes they're simple. Most of the time, they're simple questions. I've been doing it for 18 years now, so obviously to me, they're simple. But to them, they may be actually complicated, because they're new to this subject. So it's always important to have that caring personality there, and that caring individual that's going to look after you and just be like, you can message them and they'll be there to help you. You can't put that in a resume, but that's like what I offer. And it does make a huge difference when a person feels cared for, because oftentimes also in people's life these days, they just don't have any loved ones in their life. So when their healthcare provider shows them that kind of loving and caring, it actually helps tremendously with the healing process. And that's what I love to do with my clients, because that's the type of treatment I wish I had. And there were some doctors that helped me that were like that, but it was very far in between. And I wish I had that, when I injured my back way back in 2002, but I didn't have that. So I'm like, well, when I'm in a situation where I could help people, I'm going to be that person. I'm going to be the change I want to see. So if you guys are kind of looking for that type of treatment, I'll be happy to sit down and offer a free consult call and see what's going on. And then we can kind of go from there, okay? But in the meantime, this is a good checklist of how to look for a good healthcare provider for yourself so you're taken care of, okay? It's going to be tough. It's probably 1 in 20 are like that, 1 in 30. But if you find that one, definitely hold on to them, because it's going to be a very long time before you find another one like that. So wishing you guys the best. And John, David, Sebastian, Andante, Teddy, I don't know how to pronounce some of your guys' name. Roberto, Robert, what is going on, man? Marcus, Wally, Donald, good to see you. Tavo, good to see you guys. Okay, well, thanks for jumping in, guys. I hope you have a great weekend. And, of course, wishing you guys the best. Take care.